Hello, everyone, and most especially Mr. McSquirgle, who has been an inspiration to me in launching myself upon the perhaps dubious venture of doing rope cutting tests with this half-inch sisal rope from Harbor Freight, and I've been testing a couple of knives. So this is the Kershaw Launch 20, and it has blade in MagnaCut steel, and I tinkered with it a bit, and most especially I reground the blade, which was fairly robust in terms of thickness of the geometry, and had quite fat kind of bevel, primary bevel on it, fairly shallow. So not a great cutter to start out, actually, in my opinion. Just tried whittling with it and stuff. Didn't try this kind of cutting. But yeah, I worked on it significantly and also kind of straightening it up. Just, it's not all the way there. But to get it all the way there, I'm probably going to need a hammer. But anyway, yeah. So I had this kicking around, and I was thinking after all this work I put into it, wouldn't it be nice to do a comparative study between this and a new one? But instead of buying a whole new one of the knife that I already had, instead I got this other knife from Kershaw that is in MagnaCut, the same steel, and I thought that the profile looked so similar in the pictures that it would serve, and then I would also get a different knife. Now, actually, the blades are significantly different. I definitely think that there's a kind of commonality to them to some degree. And one reason also why they look so different is also because this one's been so sharpened down. So it is slimmer in this direction now. And yeah, also the stock nick thickness is different. The geometry is different. But even accounting for these things, some of which I had been able to identify by looking at the pictures, I could see, well, it's not the same grind, right? This is a full flat. This is a saber. But I wanted to see how this edge, in the same steel at least, and probably with the same heat treatment, one would reason, but then again, I assume, right? I make an ASS or blah, blah, blah. Okay. Anyway, I went for it to see what would happen. And as far as I've gotten so far, is that I did 325 cuts with this one. Yeah, there we go. And I did then subsequently 325 cuts with this one. And all the while I was testing on this paper, which I guess it's very thick. It's almost like card, but it's kind of what I had to kick around to start with. And it even occurred to me that because each time I did 25 cuts, I would then stop and test the knife, right? And I do want, maybe the first cut would feel like it was trapping, it was ripping, but then the second one would go through better. And I'm like, am I stropping the blade with it? Well, probably I am, right? By cutting with the paper, I'm actually, it's affecting the edge. It's the same as cutting the rope, is not to the same degree, but it is. And so, yeah, probably not the right paper, but it did give me some feedback. And so, yeah, by 325, what I was starting to notice some depreciation in performance here. And what I've just discovered now, actually, is that, for example, if I go in here, I can just go in with a complete push cut. See? Just push in. There I failed, It's a little tricky with the paper and stuff, but I can basically just push in. And in this area where I was cutting, this is no longer possible. However hard you try, down here it's touch and go, and actually I don't think that my edge, for whatever reason down here, it's it may have suffered also a little bit during the cutting test because when I was contacting. Maybe there's some strands of this down there, and and it's very thin. I left it very thin deliberately to see how it would hold up to that. And visibly, there is nothing that I can really make out after 325 push cuts. Well, actually, the initial ones were not push cuts, and this is another consideration that here where I put this arrow, that was where I switched from cutting like this to cutting like this, just pushing straight through. And who knows, maybe with these initial cuts here, pull cutting, I raked off a lot of the teeth or whatever. This is all, so it's really not very scientific. But I kind of get something that I wanted to see. So yeah, I mean, after 325, doing the same thing with this, it's kind of the same deal, where the factory edge down here, I can just push cut in. But if I'm up here where I was doing the rope cutting, I cannot. So, what that's telling me is that I'm getting a very similar performance from my edge as from the factory edge here. And that is interesting because, anecdotally, but I would trust my instincts, this blade would not have cut so well as this one. This is extremely slicey. I think this is actually a very, very slicey knife. I guess we could, try and measure. Here's just like a vague approximation we can get of the stock thickness there. Yeah, so that's like an eighth of an inch. I mean, it's a little over, right? But skinny. I don't know. I'm not really a guy to get out the calipers, but if anyone ever in the comments told me, man, you should take measurements with calipers and stuff like that, then I probably would. I don't know how many people care about that. But yeah, it's a way thicker, stockier factory geometry on the whole blade, but the edge is extremely fine. And so one more little thing we could possibly do. Let's see, since just double check, okay, down here somewhere where I can do it, with this edge pushing in a little bit, and up here can't push in. No. So it's a really awesome edge they put on this thing. And actually up here, where I wasn't really cutting either, because I was kind of cutting in this area, and this was jamming into the table. It was kind of sticking in depending on the angle that it went. Wow. So I mean, actually, this is kind of what I was thinking, was that really I think that this one has done better. I think this one's done a little better. But maybe we can bring back a lot of the performance here with a quick strop on this knife. So let's see what happens. Or maybe not. I have no idea. Let's find out. I doubt it. It feels dull. I mean, it's the funny thing is it still will slice you this. Once you've initiated the cut, it'll go through. Well, I think we did get an improvement. I just don't think it's going to give us a push cut. Oh. Interesting. It's a little random testing with this paper. It may also have a grain in it, the paper, that allows it to do things in one direction that it won't do in another direction. For all I know, like I say, fairly unscientific. In any case, you know, in excess of 300 cuts, I think is a pretty good result, probably for a knife. Not that I'm experienced, but figures that I have encountered lately that come to mind are McSquirgle's last test that he did on this Bark River knife that came out at 200 cuts, and that was an A2 steel. And I remember that he did the test with the Buck 420 HC that came out at 70 something cuts. So yeah, that's good, and they're still cutting, you know, cutting no problem. But I will say that actually between the two knives now, well, between the two knives, I think I prefer this knife because I like the ergos rather than all this lumpus here, right? But between the two blades, I think this one is it's just a better design for actually getting out and cutting stuff. Maybe, I guess, you know, because this is the launch, it's supposed to be more stabby, right? So they made it thicker all around, and then I basically did a Hamaguri-ba kind of amateur version, right, which is the clamshell convex grind to 0 that you would have on a katana or whatever, but obviously, you know, a katana is a lot thicker. So, I think I'm going to find some better paper. I'm going to figure out what the good paper is. And I'm probably going to do some more of this cutting because I found it fun and interesting. And I'm starting to have this hankering for data. Thanks for watching.